It's very intricate to get to know the internal world of another person and how they tick. And if you aren't naturally wired in the same way and to look at the world the same way, it really does take some inquisitiveness.
Welcome to Tilt Parenting, a podcast featuring interviews and conversations aimed at inspiring, informing, and supporting parents raising differently wired kids. I'm your host, Debbie Reber. Today's topic is a little bit different, but certainly no less interesting, relevant, or helpful. Because no doubt, if we are parenting a differently wired child, then many of us, whether we are neurotypical or neurodivergent, are coupled or co-parenting with a differently wired partner. If this is you, then today's conversation will be especially relevant. My guest is licensed clinical social worker and family and couples therapist Kate McNulty. Kate is herself autistic, and in this episode, we dig into a lot of important issues surrounding what she calls mixed neurotype couples, the common challenges and misconceptions, fostering connection and understanding as partners and parents, handling a later in life diagnosis, and much more. Kate also tells us about her new book, Love and Aspergers, practical strategies to help couples understand each other and strengthen their connection. If you're in a mixed neurotype relationship or have wondered about your own child's future prospects for partnership, Kate's perspective and practical strategies will undoubtedly give you hopeful food for thought and perhaps even challenge some of your assumptions. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Before I get to that, if you are new to Tilt Parenting and found this podcast while searching for resources to support you on your journey of parenting a neurodivergent child, I have a few other resources I want to be sure you know about. My book, Differently Wired, A Parent's Guide to Raising an Atypical Child with Confidence and Hope, it just hit its 3-year anniversary this month, and it's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. In Differently Wired, I share my best practices and practical advice for supporting not just our kids, but ourselves throughout this journey. And if you're looking to make some quick, positive shifts in your day-to-day life, I invite you to do my free Differently Wired 7-Day Challenge. You'll get a short daily video highlighting one actionable thing you can do right away to impact the way you think, feel, and act in relation to your child. You also get a downloadable mini workbook and access to a private Facebook group, and it's totally free. Just go to tiltparenting.com/7day to sign up. That's tiltparenting.com/7day. Thanks so much. And now here is my conversation with Kate. Hello, Kate. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for making time to talk with me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this. I was intrigued when you reached out to me and you shared your new book with me. And yeah, I think we're going to have an interesting conversation today. And before we get into that and learn more about your book and the work that you do, could you tell us a little bit about kind of who you are in the world and a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I've been a therapist for many years. This has been my only career, and I didn't know much about autism until one of my kids started talking to me about it as a young adult. And when that came up, I started reading and researching and recognized that I'm autistic and that I had 2 autistic kids. And it's been really a wonderful pivot in my career to learn about this and get to work with more autistic people. And so when this book was offered to me to write, I was just really delighted to plow into the research and get even more well-informed about it.
And how long ago was that you self-identified as being autistic and kind of made that pivot?
It's been about 8 years now. So
Okay.
I've had a lot of time to get used to the idea and kind of construct a new identity, because I think something that happens for many of us when we recognize this, especially later in life, is that you do this kind of retrospective, and it's like zooming through your life with a wider lens. And so having that recognition that explains so many events or incidences or experiences is just really a lot to get used to.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious if that still happens, even if you still are making connections about things from your childhood and your new identity.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just looking back through what I know of the generations as well and speculating on how my parents, who I now clearly recognize were autistic, may have sensed things differently from the majority population or just had maybe unusual experiences that I didn't come to recognize until sadly it was too late to talk to them about it, but I still kind of feel like I have conversations in my head with them all the time about being autistic.
I think that so many listeners are going to relate to this experience. I know that many people in this differently wired community in the tilt parenting audience have discovered their own neurodivergence through going through the process of learning more about their kids. And so I think it's really such an interesting perspective to just know what that experience is like as an adult to reclaim and make sense of. And then I think it changes how we show up for our kids too, right?
Absolutely.
So, we are going to be talking about your book, which came out last fall. It's called Love and Aspergers: Practical Strategies to Help Couples Understand Each Other and Strengthen Their Connection. So, can you share more about why this topic and why you decided to write this book?
This came up for me because as I did more reading and listening about being autistic, one theme that was persistent, especially in the mental health arena, was spouses who married or partnered with autistic people and joined this kind of chorus of complaint. Like there was this sort of stigmatizing of the autistic partner and a way that neurotypical partners felt like they were making sacrifices or they were burdened with an autistic partner, or it was just very difficult to be with somebody who was autistic. And I just thought, wow, somebody needs to step up and send out a different message, because I think that's really doing a disservice to not only the autistic people, but anybody in the relationship like that, that there's probably a lot being missed. So as I saw more couples and did more thinking and reading about this, I certainly came to find that there are many traits that autistic people have that are just misperceived or misinterpreted by their neurotypical partners. And so anybody who can help shed some light on that, I thought, well, that will be a good service to offer. So because I've been seeing couples for most of the last 20 years, so I was able to sort of represent the autistic point of view, but also write the book as an experienced couples therapist.
It's such a unique and important lens that you bring to this. And I will say that I hear this a lot too. You know, I have a membership community where I'm getting to know a number of parents who are, you know, co-parenting, raising kids with an autistic or otherwise neurodivergent partner. And that is its own thing, right? That is a whole other level of understanding and work really that needs to be done in order to make that work so that everyone can show up for the kids as best as possible. But I'm wondering if you could share a little bit with us about, you know, what are some of the most common issues that you hear about from couples who maybe, you use this term mixed neurotype, which I had never seen before. And I really like that language. So what are some of the most common challenges that couples in a mixed neurotype relationship are dealing with?
One that comes up so very frequently is a spouse who will say, my partner is not affectionate enough. I don't know what they're feeling. They don't talk to me. So those kinds of patterns are things that I think neurotypical people are operating out of a limited kind of framework about what affection looks like and how it gets expressed. And they're thinking in conventional ways that might involve romantic gestures or getting flowers or kind of unexpected, spontaneous, seductive behaviors, things like that. And so just helping people see that your autistic partner may be doing really kind things for you or considerations or just wanting to offer a kind of steadiness to you in your life that goes unrecognized.
Hmm. And okay, so I'm wondering, that brought up another question that I'd love to hear if there are other common challenges that these couples have. But I'm wondering if this is something that isn't evident at the beginning of a relationship. Like our clients who come to you tend to be kind of down the road, and they're realizing this is happening, and it somehow wasn't as evident in the beginning, or is that the way that it's always been? I'm just curious what that journey is like for couples.
Yeah, I think part of what happens at the beginning of any relationship, of course, is infatuation blinds us all. That's the way we're made. So, people they fall in love with one another, and they later get a fuller picture of who the other person is. But I think too, like characteristic of the relationships that I was writing about, the autistic person who's dating a new partner is often doing a lot of masking, which is a term we use for autistic people kind of propping up a facade of looking normal or neurotypical, trying to fit in, maybe being on their best behavior and trying to refrain from certain impulses they might have, like fidgeting or moving around a lot, or maybe saying odd things, unexpected things, but they're not so likely to do that in a dating context. So then when people get to know each other better later as the relationship develops, some of these behaviors emerge because they're the natural person. That's the way the person is inclined to act in an ordinary living situation. And so these things might be off-putting or irritating to the neurotypical partner who thought they had somebody different. And then later they find about these other tendencies, or how much quiet the person might need, or how little they want to attend family functions or loud, crowded events. They went along during the dating time because that's what you do to be sociable. But as the months or years go by, it becomes apparent that's not the way they actually live or what they prefer to do.
And so how do you guide these couples through figuring this out together? I'm assuming that couples who come to you with these challenges or things showing up in their relationship, and the reason why you wrote the book is because they want to work on it. They want to stay connected, and they need guidance in how to do that. So what are some of the ways that you support couples in working through this?
So often, by the time the couple comes to see me, the gateway is to help them parent well together. Their agenda, if nothing else, is like, we want to do right by our children, even if we're struggling in our marriage. So helping them recognize that their kids need to be in an atmosphere of affection and calm, and seeing parents support one another is a huge motivator for couples to work on the relationship. And so a lot of what I do is talk to people about what we know from the research about how couples can express caring and friendship to one another, and look for those overtures that their partner is making. So, for example, with an autistic partner, maybe the ways that they show I love you are things like remembering to pick up the kind of tea you like at the store. Or if you're going somewhere new, they might be the ones to put the Google directions in your phone. Or they might be trying to plan ahead about some kind of family event or outing, and choose something that they know they can tolerate. So that's the kind of invitation that they might extend.
We'll be right back after this quick break. Maybe I've watched too many seasons of The Amazing Race, but every time I have to go somewhere on the subway, I treat it like a competition. It's all about making the right gut decisions about which route will get me there the fastest. Sometimes those decisions get me where I'm going early, and other times my gambles don't really pay off. Probiotics can't help with most gut decisions, but if your gut needs a little support, Ritual has your back. Their Synbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 supplement, has clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been using Synbiotic Plus for about 6 months now, and it's become a core part of my morning routine. I take the mini capsule every morning while making my way through my inbox, whether I'm at home or I'm on the road, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the capsule itself is delayed released, which helps it survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon, and that's exactly where we want it to go. Ritual invested in a study modeling the human colon, which showed that Synbiotic Plus significantly increased microbial diversity and the growth of beneficial bacteria. There's no more shame in your gut game. Synbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/tilt. Start Ritual or add Symbiotic Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/tilt for 25% off. During this month of planning and organization for big transitions, rhythms and routines have been absolutely essential for our physical and emotional well-being. So Green Chef nights are reliably and predictably a good night. We know the ingredients will be fresh and prepped, the instructions easy to follow, and the meal delicious. We're all still talking about last week's turkey tacos with mango chimichurri sauce, refried beans, and Monterey Jack cheese. Green Chef contributes to a healthy lifestyle with easy and delicious menus like fresh seasonal salads and grain bowls, and with over 80 weekly meal and market options, plus rotating options to suit a variety of lifestyles, whether Mediterranean, plant-based, calorie-smart, keto, protein-packed, gluten-free. There are always plenty of options to choose from. Whatever you select, you'll get farm-fresh ingredients, organic whole fruits and veggies, and premium proteins, all delivered straight to your door. I love those 4 words. Straight to my door. Oh, and one more thing I love about Green Chef, they have an app, which means it's easy to manage meal preferences and delivery from your phone if you want to. And I, for one, want to. I am in that mode where I'm making the most of little moments like waiting in line at the pharmacy or for the F train to pull into the station to tackle all of those to-dos. So the convenience of an app is key for me. Green Chef has a special offer for Tilt listeners. Go to greenchef.com/tilt50 and use code TILT50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you use the code TILT50 at greenchef.com/tilt50. So you talked about parenting, and I'd love to get into that a little bit more in terms of what do you see? What I'll share with you what I hear from a lot of parents is that sometimes if they have a partner who is autistic or otherwise neurodivergent, sometimes they're not on the same page, or there might be some, well, I was like that, and it's not that big of a deal. It just not a willingness to kind of go down that path. Or this parent or co-parent may not have already self-identified or been identified as being on the spectrum or neurodivergent. So that is a source of frustration that I hear in parents, and they kind of don't know how to navigate that journey. I'm wondering what you hear in terms of that co-parenting piece and where the biggest challenges lie.
So you're saying the neurodivergent person might minimize difficulties that their child is having that are visible to the neurotypical person?
Yes.
Yeah. So I do think that that's a very common scenario. And I think that, just getting the best objective information you can about your child's difficulties or behaviors, and just trying to be objective and showing that we have information from research is often a really appealing stance for the neurodivergent person who might be convinced by something that's beyond just the other parent's subjective observations.
Mm-hmm.
And really having that compassion too for your partner, and being able to tell them, look, I see our child struggling, and if you struggled that way too, that's wrong. That's unfortunate. I'm sorry that you went through that. Being able to offer them in retrospect, it's kind of a wish fulfillment to say, oh my goodness, I can imagine how hard that must have been for you as a child. I wish someone had taken care of this for you better.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you could answer this question from 2 perspectives, and I hope that I can express it in a way that makes sense. So again, a lot of parents who I know are listening to this, they may be having a growing realization that their partner's neurology may be similar to their child's. Mm-hmm. And that can be challenging for both people in that partnership, right? For a neurotypical parent who's trying to figure out how to support a child, and then also realizing, wait, I'm going through the same challenges with my partner. Mm-hmm. They may feel really isolated. And then the neurodivergent partner also feeling not seen, not understood, not getting the support that they may need. So from both of those sides, how do you help both those parents work together?
One thing that I teach people in therapy, that I model for them and I want to encourage them to do in therapy, is to listen for the part that you can't agree with about what your partner's saying, or listen for the part that you can validate. Like, even if you're in opposition or it's hard to make a plan, having the attitude that I'm going to look for where the overlap is and focus on that and see if that helps us get further down the path. I think that's one technique that couples can try to use, because naturally, if we get in opposition or we're having a conflict with our partner, the way our brains are made is we want to argue. We want to keep making our own point, or we want to say it again, or we want to say it louder, but that's not going to help. So if we focus on where are there parts that I can support about what my partner's saying, or where are there the parts where I can say, I can see why it seems that way to you, or, I get that point of view and that makes sense, this part or that part. And yet I'm asking you to keep considering the part that I'm pointing out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think looking for that area where there's sort of overlapping circles in the conversation where you can agree on, and just continuing to emphasize that is one kind of a quick tip that I can offer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I won't deny it. These are complicated problems. And of course, we all care about our children. People get very impassioned. What I want to encourage people to do is avoid getting in such a position of advocacy for your child that you're going against what your partner's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your kid feels that you're in opposition or there's tension about them, they're going to react to that. They're going to pick up on that, whether they overhear arguments or not. It doesn't really matter. They're attuned enough that they're going to sense what the atmosphere is in your home. So the more you can work toward some kind of moving in the same direction with your partner, or, if you can't do that, it's probably time to get some help from either a parent advocate or a therapist or somebody who can help you hash this stuff out, because you do need to get united and you need to be moving in the same direction, or your child will suffer for it.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, and that is something I hear from a lot of parents who they do sometimes feel like it's me and my child, or my children against my partner. It can become more of an adversarial or exclusionary relationship, really. So I think that's really important to be mindful of how critical it is for our kids that they feel that the parents are working together and that they're united and connected in parenting them. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the gifts of mixed neurotype relationships, because I can only imagine that you also see in your practice, and when parents or couples come together to do this work, that these relationships can actually be really rich and deep, and in a way that a neurotypical couple may not experience. What would you say are some of the gifts of mixed neurotype relationships?
Seeing how couples can sustain curiosity about one another is really exciting and rewarding. And I think that is an infinite journey for any couple, really, but it's particularly challenging and deep. It's very intricate to get to know the internal world of another person and how they tick. And if you aren't naturally wired in the same way and to look at the world the same way, it really does take some inquisitiveness. So I think doing that is one thing that couples can do. And I also think having that recognition that we each have our own strengths, and united, it's synergy, right? It's the two of us are greater than the sum of our parts. And so when you have people who really have very different ways of operating and regarding the world and solving problems, that means that there are double strengths in the couple, because they both have ways of doing things that are quite diverse from one another and have that ability to be a perception check for each other. So just combining those kind of quirks or differences or unique viewpoints is a real strength for couples, again, when they can get in that mode of being appreciative of one another and kind of marveling at one another, recognizing, wow, you're really different from me. That's pretty cool. And the more people can do that as a married couple or a partnered couple, the more they're able to do that for their children too, to just affirm their their uniqueness and have that appreciation and joy, that sense of, I mean, the thing I really like about your book is it's kind of celebratory, it's just really got this kind of jubilance in the book about how there's so much possibility. It's so exciting to look at how very different people are. And when we stop squelching ourselves and try to conform, we can invent and create and think up so many fascinating ideas and wonderful solutions to problems that, that's really a source of delight and freshness for a couple.
I love that. Let's talk about kids for a moment. I'm just wondering, for parents listening to this who have kids who are young adults, who are entering into their own romantic relationships and exploring that, I think there's a lot of fear and concern and worry among some parents, like, what is this going to look like? Is my child going to be able to navigate a romantic relationship, and what might that look like? And how can I support my child so that they can, if that's something they choose to pursue, can do it in a way that can feel good for them? So what can parents of neurodivergent kids expect as they mature when it comes to love and romance? Big question.
It is a big question, and I think it's a very compelling one because, so much of our guidance and education for young adults has been rooted in fear. There's another theme I appreciated about your book, that idea of possibility instead of fear. And so I think that applies also to parenting young adults and youth, that we want to help people manage their vulnerabilities. And those are very real for neurodivergent kids, like ADHD kids who have a lot of impulsiveness, or who are going to go along with what the gang does, or kind of be the first one to take a leap. We need to find ways to protect those kids and help them manage their impulsive natures by knowing themselves well and giving them small opportunities to make choices and make decisions all along the path, so that they have more self-awareness and they have more, I think of both my children and so many young people as experiential learners. Like, the only way they're really going to get it is when they get a chance to have the experience themselves. Me talking about it or giving them a book to read, it's just not going to hit the mark. So helping kids have a series of experiences and experiments with friendships or dealing with disappointment or frustration along the way in their lives is the building blocks we need for them, so that when they reach adulthood, they can handle themselves capably. And one sad thing we know about autistic people is they're quite vulnerable to sexual exploitation and abuse. So we want to help protect kids with skills and awareness about how to assess who is a trustworthy person. And, that starts when they're like 6 or 7, right? We don't do that. We don't deal with that when they're 16 or 17. We need to start helping them differentiate. How do we know if people are reliable? How do we know if we should let somebody in our inner circle or count on them to show up for our birthday party or whatever it may be? We need to help our kids develop those skills. And really the gift of autism is also, though, pattern recognition and having excellent observational skills and being able to talk with a trusted adult, whether it's you or a counselor, to have a confidant to run their perceptions by and get some feedback on, like, when I had hurt feelings from this friend, how could I have handled that? Or how do I deal with it if someone's bullying me or teasing me in a mean way? So the roots of this begin when kids are quite young, that we want to help them lay the foundation for being able to size other people up and make reasonable judgments about people, so that they don't end up in troubled relationships or vulnerable situations without the skills to handle it. So for my kids, for example, that meant having personal cell phones was still quite new when my kids were young, but I got them phones as soon as I thought they could handle having a phone, because it really gave them a chance to move about in the world, but be accountable to me. And so my kids took that responsibility seriously. And one way that I knew I could rely on them was we always had agreements about when they would call me and check in, or when they would text, and how they would let me know where they were. And fortunately, my kids were not so incredibly impulsive as some are, and they were able to manage that very capably. So I had this sense of consistency and reliability about them that I was able to give them a measure of freedom. And fortunately, it's probably good luck as much as anything. Like nothing terrible happened. Nobody ever got arrested. Nobody got in kind of awful situations or an accident or anything drastic. And, my kids have landed on their own 2 feet. They're in their 20s now. They're doing very well. But I think really we need to be able to give our kids some series of experiences that allow them to attempt learning independently when we can be confident there aren't going to be catastrophic consequences from that.
Such good advice. And I really appreciate all of that you just shared. And that reminder of starting young with our kids and helping them really learn to tune in and trust their guts, right? Trust their instincts about people and about their experiences and learn to understand that. We'll be right back after this quick break. Hey there, it's Debbie. I love making this show and sharing conversations about how to support our awesome neurodivergent kids. I've seen how even one little insight from an interview can spark a big shift in daily life. But I know that raising complex kids can be messy and lonely. And just when we think we figured it out, something comes up that boots us right back to feeling overwhelmed and stuck. That's why I've poured everything into creating a way for parents like us navigating complex parenting journeys to join together and chart a path that feels positive, hopeful, and doable. It's the brand new Differently Wired Club experience. In the club, you'll get personal support from me and other seasoned parent coaches, 6 live calls every month where you can connect and get your personal questions answered, the opportunity to learn directly from authors and experts like I have on this show, monthly themes for getting specific and tactical, an exclusive private podcast feed, and the best, most generous community of parents. Seriously, these folks show up for themselves and each other, and that right there is really everything. Because it's a daily reminder that we're not alone. Our kids aren't broken, and we have totally got this. The recently rebooted Differently Wired Club is on a brand new platform with its very own iOS and Android app. It is such a great space. However you learn, whatever your style, no matter the ages, genders, and neurodivergent profile of your children, the Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Join us today by going to tiltparenting.com/club. That's tiltparenting.com/club. I hope to see you on the inside.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it. And anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
I want to go pivot back again to adulthood. In the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that you were you identified as being autistic. I think you said around 10 years ago. This is something that is happening. I think many adults are starting to self-identify more and more, whether it's autism or ADHD or other neurodivergences. And I'm wondering if you have any. I'm imagining that supports the family, first of all, the family dynamic to get that information. But do you have any best practices for navigating that process? If someone's listening to this and they're like, well, I think this might be going on with me, but is it worth finding out more? Or, what would you advise them to do?
Uh, I may be a heretic in my profession, but I say just get on Twitter or some social media site and use the hashtag actually autistic. Learn from autistic adults. Really, unless there's some reason you need a formal diagnosis for disability reasons or legal accommodations at your work, I frankly would not waste the money on formal diagnosis. I think you're going to learn more from autistic adults than any professionals. I'm sad to admit that my mental health profession collectively is way behind the times on understanding autistic traits or being able to accurately diagnose people. We've got a lot of catching up to do with the general population in that sense.
Mhm.
So just using the resources that are out there and getting on social media is my very best advice for first steps and educating yourself, because many autistic people are so urgent about wanting to get the message out about the potential for your child and how they've figured things out along the way as they've become adults. And a lot of us are hyperverbal or hyperlexic. You know, there are a lot of writers who are autistic. There are a lot of prolific tweeters who are autistic. So there are many, many people who want to share their information with you and want to help you kind of join the community and jump on the bandwagon, because there are a lot of us. I think there are probably remarkable numbers of people who call themselves autism moms or autism dads who they don't realize they're actually autistic too, just like their child. So, just using the resources that are out there in the popular media and listening to autistic people who are already way down the road and can really share a lot of useful information with you about what your child might be experiencing or needing. I think those are really your best resources. Certainly there are a lot more good books coming out all the time, but it's never going to be at the speed of light like the posts on social media.
Right. That's great. And listeners, I'll include some links in the show notes as well. I know there are some really great Facebook groups, and there is a lot of support out there. So I appreciate that advice. So I wanted to ask one last question, and then I'd love you to let us know how people can learn more about your work. But when you first reached out to me, I got curious about the title of your book, which is Love and Aspergers. And language is such a conversation right now in the autistic community. And I know that term Aspergers is a word that's starting to be rejected by more and more folks. So I'm curious to know more about the choice to use that word and where you stand with that.
I think there are a lot of people who self-identified or got diagnosed around the time I did or a few years before who identified with Asperger's because that was the correct term at the time. And the book title came about because of the publisher's choice. Their recommendation was based on search terms that people use. And it's just kind of a funny split that when we talk about children, we use the term autism, but many people who think of adults are still using the term Asperger's. I think it's just a kind of chronological catch up that we're doing as a society to recognize that autistic children do grow up to become autistic adults. And so it's okay to continue using that term. But I do recognize, I think a lot of people have a sense of collectivity or identification with the term Asperger's because it was current for a while. And, those of us who are autistic, we don't really get to belong in a lot of places. We don't really get to be part of groups or clubs in a lot of ways that really feel comfortable to us. So I wouldn't want to diminish the term Asperger's for somebody who feels like that's a way they want to identify. I think it's just a very personal choice. I know a lot about the controversy behind the term Asperger's, but I just think we need to make our own language about how we identify. And so I call myself autistic, but if you don't, that's okay with me. I respect that.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. And yeah, I appreciate that. It's something I'm uber conscious of, just because my community has so many people in it from so many different cultural backgrounds and neurodivergent backgrounds. And so I'm very interested in language. So I appreciate that. So before we say goodbye, can you tell listeners where they can learn more about you and check out your book, which is a great read, by the way. If you are listening to this and you are in a mixed neurotype relationship, you will get so much out of this book. It's very practical and as I said, a great read. So how can people connect with you, Kate?
Yeah, thank you for your kind words. They can find the book Love and Aspergers on any just major book outlet. I have another book coming out. It's about a different topic. It's called Parenting Adult Children. So that one will also be released in June, and that'll be available on, Bookshop or Amazon or wherever you prefer to pick up your books. But I have a website called autistictherapist.com. And to make my work accessible to more people, I can't see everybody for therapy. There's only one of me. And I recognize therapy is a costly service. So I'm doing a series of information products. And so you can buy some courses, some self-study courses that I'm trying to make information rich. So if you want to go to autistictherapist.com, you'll find me there. And I also have that name on my social media presences.
Fantastic. And listeners, as always, I will have links in the show notes. And now I would love if you could just tell us what parenting adult children is about. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I wrote this book because I hear from so many people in both generations that there are young adults who are making decisions about whether to cut off contact with their parents, or there are parents coming to me and talking about how, either my adult child won't speak to me anymore, or I'm worried about them because they're using alcohol and drugs, or they're in my house and I don't know how to get them to move out. So there's a whole range of difficulties between the generations. And this book, too, is going to have just lots of information. It's directed at the parents, of course, but just lots of information and techniques about how to talk effectively to your adult child, however old they are, whether they're 18 or 47, and just to have some ways to demonstrate respect and draw boundaries and, do effective kinds of limit setting with the young adults in your life, or to figure out if they're drifting away and you're worried about losing contact, how to appeal to them, how to engage them, and how to strengthen your relationship so that, you get the joy of the lifetime with the person that you've parented, not just the 0 to 18 years of the heavy lifting. For me, my kids are in their late 20s and it just keeps getting better. I'm just so delighted to watch them grow and have them in my life and be interested in what they're thinking about. They keep me current on popular culture and other things I would have no way of knowing. So I just think parenting should be a lifetime pleasure. And I want to help people have that sense that we don't just boot our kids out at 18 and then they're not relating to us anymore, or we become obsolete. The generations need each other, and there's too much stratification in our society. We need parents and young adults to continue to relate and teach one another.
Sounds like a great resource. I look forward to checking that out. That's very exciting. Well, Kate, thank you so much. This has been a very insightful conversation and so helpful. And I just appreciate it. I'm so happy you reached out to me and that we've gotten to connect. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really been a delight to talk to you.
You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. You can find links to all the resources my guests and I discussed on the detailed show notes page. Just go to tiltparenting.com/podcast and select this episode. If you love this podcast and want to help cover the cost of its production, please consider joining my Patreon campaign. For as little as $2 a month, you can help cover the cost of the hosting platform, editing, production, and more. Just go to patreon.com/tiltparenting to learn more. Lastly, please help this podcast stay visible and easily found by subscribing and leaving a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much for considering. And that's all for this week. Stay safe, stay well, and take good care. And for more information on Tilt Parenting, visit www.tiltparenting.com.
Hey, are you a parent of a teenager? Are you feeling overwhelmed about how to be what they need while also holding limits and boundaries that keep them safe? Are you tired of conversations that negate how messy this season of parenting is? Well, I've got you. My name is Casey O'Rourke. I am a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and the host of the Joyful Courage podcast. Every week, I come to you with an interview digging into tough topics with experts I trust and solo shows that go deep into the personal growth and mindset needed to raise teens in a way that grows them into confident, capable young people. I am not afraid of getting real about the intersection of conscious parenting and the teen years, while also bringing in vulnerability, humor, and lightness. I'm walking the path with you and honored to serve. Listen to Joyful Courage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts.